All right, picture this. For nearly 1,000 years, one of the world's great ancient civilizations is just thriving. I mean, they're building these incredible cities, trading with empires thousands of kilometers away, supporting a population of millions. And then, poof, they're gone. Today, we're going to be archaeological detectives. We're going to try and decode the story of this silent giant, the Harappan Civilization.
And this, right here, is the central mystery that's had historians scratching their heads for a century. See, unlike ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, the Harappans left behind no grand stories of kings, no epic poems about their conquests. And the biggest piece of the puzzle? They left a script that we still can't read. Their entire world just fell silent. So that leaves us with a huge challenge. How do you tell the story of a people who can't speak for themselves anymore?
And we're not talking about some small, isolated kingdom here. This civilization was massive. It spanned over 1.25 million square kilometers. Think about that. That's a territory covering parts of modern-day India, Pakistan, and even Afghanistan. This wasn't just a few cities. It was a complex, interconnected society that absolutely dominated the region. So its disappearance, that's like an entire empire just fading from the history books. So since we can't read what they wrote, we have to piece their story together from the clues they left behind in the ground. And our investigation, well, it starts with the very foundations of their society.
The cities themselves. And what we find isn't some chaotic mess. No, it's a level of urban planning that was just absolutely revolutionary for its time.
You know, the Harappan blueprint for their cities was surprisingly consistent. Most of them had this fortified high ground, the citadel, probably where the bigwigs, the leaders, and priests hung out, and then a larger, lower town for everybody else. But then you have a place like Dolavira, which takes it up a notch. It actually adds a middle town, creating this unique three-part layout. And you gotta understand, this wasn't an accident. This was a society built on order, on structure, on planning.
And the engineering, wow. I mean, this is what's truly mind-blowing. Look at this massive, covered drain. It's a work of genius. Every single house was connected to this incredibly sophisticated sanitation system that funneled wastewater right out of the city. Let me put this in perspective. This level of public hygiene was centuries ahead of many other great civilizations of the ancient world.
And this just perfectly shows how they planned for the future. You have to remember they lived in a pretty dry region, prone to drought. Water was everything. So what did they do at Dolavira? They built a staggering 16 massive reservoirs. They were damming up seasonal streams, creating this intricate web of channels just to capture and store every single drop of rainwater. This wasn't just construction. This was mastering their environment.
Okay, so you've got these incredible organized cities, but they need a powerful economic engine to keep them running, right? So for our next clue, we're going to look at how the Harappans built an empire not just of brick and mortar, but of goods. An empire powered by one of the most extensive trade networks of the entire Bronze Age.
And their trade wasn't just some random bartering here and there. Oh no, this was a highly organized business, led by these incredibly sophisticated figures known as the Sarthavaha. And don't just think of them as a simple guide. A Sarthavaha was way more than that. They were like a merchant entrepreneur, a chief capitalist, who managed investments, organized all the logistics, and even acted as a diplomat, negotiating safe passage through different lands.
And the scale of this trade, it was just immense. I mean, sure, they used local stuff like cotton and timber, but they were importing luxury and essential goods from hundreds, even thousands of kilometers away. We're talking precious lapis lazuli from the mountains of Afghanistan, copper from the deserts of Cholistan, beautiful marine shells all the way from the coasts. It was basically a global supply chain, but 4,500 years ago. Just incredible.
All right, so we've looked at the practical stuff, the cities, the trade. Now let's turn to the more personal clues, the things they carved in stone and cast in bronze. These artifacts, they give us this rare, fascinating glimpse into the minds of the Harappan people, their art, their identity, and what they believed in.
And here he is. This is maybe the most famous face of the entire Indus Valley, the so-called priest king. It's carved from steatite, and just look at him. That calm, meditative expression, the elaborate robe, it all suggests someone with some serious authority. But who was he? A king? A priest? Something else? Honestly, his real identity is still one of the civilization's greatest mysteries.
And then, in complete contrast, you have this masterpiece, the dancing girl. I mean, if the priest king is all formal and stiff, she is just bursting with life. Her posture is so relaxed, so confident, it's like a moment of casual coolness just captured forever in bronze.
It's no wonder this tiny figurine has captivated people for over 100 years. The artistry is just stunning.
But the artifacts we've found the most of are these incredible little seals. Thousands of them. And they're carved with such amazing detail, usually showing these powerful animals like the mythical unicorn you see here, or the majestic Brahmani bull. They probably had a bunch of different uses, right? Maybe as stamps for trade goods, kind of like a company logo, or as personal ID tags, or maybe even as protective charms people wore.
But look closer. Take a really good look. See that line of elegant symbols above the animals on every single seal? That is the Indus script. That's their lost language. It's the one clue that could finally tell us their stories in their own words. Their myths, their history, even their names. Cracking that code? That is the absolute holy grail of Harappan archaeology.
You know, if you really want to understand what a culture truly believes, you have to look at how they treated their dead. It's our final area of investigation, and it's a big one, because how a society deals with the end of life, well, that can tell you so much about their social structure, their rituals, and what they thought happened in the afterlife.
So what have archaeologists found? Well, it looks like the Harappans had at least two main types of funeral rites, which were actually described later in ancient texts. You had anegdinigda, that's basically non-cremation, like burial. And then you had agninigda, which is cremation, committing the body to fire. The fact that they did both tells you this was a complex society, with a lot of different customs.
And some of these burials were incredibly elaborate. I mean, take this one from Kalibangan. The person wasn't just put in a hole in the ground. No, they were placed in a custom-built mud brick chamber. And get this, it was surrounded by over 70 pottery vessels. This was clearly someone important, someone of high status, who was being sent off to the afterlife with everything they could possibly need.
And then you get the really puzzling cases, like this rare joint burial from Lothal. You've got two people buried together in the same grave, so who were they? A married couple? Was it some kind of ritual sacrifice? The truth is, we just don't know for sure. And it's mysteries like this that really remind you how much of their world is still a secret.
This one for me is one of the most moving clues we have. It's a burial from a site called Sanoli, but there's no body. Instead, the grave just has pottery and personal weapons. The theory is that this was a symbolic burial, maybe for a warrior who died far away from home and whose body couldn't be brought back. It's just such a powerful statement about honoring someone's memory, their identity, even when they're not there. So after looking at all these clues, what have we actually learned?
Well, what we've pieced together is a picture of a truly remarkable people. They were master planners and engineers. They were global traders. They were gifted artists with really complex ideas about life and death. And maybe the most unique thing about them? They managed all of this incredible sophistication without building the giant pyramids or statues to kings and pharaohs that you see in places like Egypt or Mesopotamia.
To put it simply, they built a spectacular civilization. One that, as this quote perfectly puts it, must have dazzled the contemporary world with whom they came in contact. And that brings us right back to where we started, to that great mystery. They built this world that was stable, prosperous, and incredibly advanced for almost 1,000 years. And then, it was just gone. Now, people still debate why. Maybe it was climate change, maybe the river shifted course, maybe there was social upheaval. We don't know for sure. But their silent ruins leave us with this really profound and kind of urgent question. What can this silent civilization teach us about how fragile our own world might be and about the challenge of building something that truly lasts?